This is the Why the Last Man podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Why the Last Man, episode 7, My Mother Saw a Monkey. A quick correction up front. I noticed throughout this episode that we were calling the former First Lady Norma instead of Marla Cunningham, and considering how wonderful the performance of Paris Jefferson is in this episode, we've said her name wrong multiple times throughout the episode. Really sorry about that. That doesn't normally happen, but just so you know, we are aware that we got her name wrong throughout the episode. Anyway, on with the podcast.
They asked if we were followed. They wanted to know who you guys were. They wanted to know about AMP. They gave me toast.
How many are there?
A lot. Dozens, I don't know, 50, maybe more.
Why'd they bring you here?
They were having a meeting, I think. Like, what do we do about them meeting?
Some of them are serving life sentences, so if they think we're a threat.
What? You trailed off.
They're gonna kill us. That's what she's saying. They are going to kill us.
No, I don't know. I don't think so. No.
Well, at least one of us will die ignorant.
Welcome back, fellow survivors, to the 7th episode of Why the Last Man. We're talking about My Mother Saw a Monkey this week's episode. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow survivors. I'm one of your other hosts, John.
I'm rounding out this group of double entendres. I am Chris. So it really does sound like the name of a porn film, doesn't it? My mother
really
saw a monkey.
A really bad one.
Well, it's like, yeah, the pizza man came and my mother saw a monkey, the double feature.
They are terrible, Chris. You need to watch better porn.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm only there for the storylines, you know, those B movies.
Of course. Welcome back, fellow survivors. The 7th episode of Why the Last Man. Should I speak for all of us, or should I just let you guys say whether you like the episode or not?
I'll speak for all of us.
I loved this episode. I know that for definite. How did you guys feel about it overall?
Yeah, I really, really loved this episode. It's my favourite to date.
Right.
I think it was just spectacular. There were some performances in this that, gosh, I felt so sorry for them. The way Norma was portrayed was amazing.
Absolutely. How about yourself, Chris?
Surprisingly, this is my favourite episode of the season. And I say that knowing what we have had so far, from action senses or kind of storylines. This is just full of amazing performances, particularly some of the 355 scenes, and just even Yorick himself. But yeah, overall, just absolutely adored.
Yeah, excellent episode. Left a bit reeling by the end of this one, with everything that went on, and we will talk about it in full spoiler-filled detail. But if you aren't following the podcast, make sure you subscribe to it over at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to us on any podcast player you want to. You can also send us feedback on the series or any of the shows that we cover to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. But there's loads to discuss. Let's get into the episode. Once again, this show was based on the comic book series by Brian K. Vaughn and Pia Guerra. The showrunner for the show is Eliza Clark. This episode, again, was written by Olivia Purnell, who's written a number of episodes this season, and directed by Lauren Wolkstein. Lauren Wolkstein directed an episode of Cloak and Dagger in the past, so she's worked in the Marvel Universe.
Great stuff. Loved that series.
It was really good, wasn't it? And she also worked very closely on the series Queen Sugar from Ava DuVernay as well. So lots of good TV shows that Lauren Wolkstein has worked on in the past. And as I say, I think you guys have already said your favorite episode of this season. Great work on this episode. Some fantastic moments that I'm sure we'll point out as we go on throughout the episode.
Definitely. This really did have solid performances all the way through. Just loved literally every scene. It was just so well layered, and some great shots again from the director here, Lauren Wolkstein. Really enjoyed one of them. I thought it was pretty iconic, to be honest.
We obviously will be talking about that later on. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. As Dr. Alison Mann, Yorick, Ampersand, and 355 make their way to San Francisco, Yorick ties himself in knots trying to show off his escapology abilities to Dr. Mann. But 355 falls asleep at the wheel and crashes the camper van into a tree. They are rescued by an armed group from a local town who lock up 355 and Dr. Mann, thinking Yorick was their captive. Yorick wakes up and over breakfast reveals that his companions were not kidnappers and that he has no explanation for his survival, but that he and Ampersand are the last creatures with the Y chromosome on the planet. The town residents are unimpressed, but let them stay until 355 heals. As they learn the citizens were formerly inhabitants of a women's prison, some of the residents have concerns that whoever is chasing Yorick will disrupt their new community. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, the pursuers reveal to Regina Oliver and President Brown that she's convinced 355 was with a man and a monkey. Regina shares the ridiculous story with Kimberly and the First Lady, but the First Lady Norma quickly realizes that she saw the very same man and his monkey and was made to think it was a dream. Jennifer Brown, ruffled with the debrief from Regina and the soldiers, becomes distracted as she has an unexpected visitor when Yorick's ex-girlfriend Beth turns up at the Pentagon. After some food, a shower, and a peek inside the newly established government, Beth leaves, being grateful to have spent some time with someone else who loved Yorick. But after leaving the Pentagon, she returns to her van and reveals that it won't take much of a push for the collapse of the government. With the knowledge of Yorick and his monkey, Kimberly is enraged and hell-bent to bring down Jennifer Brown's administration, but she needs proof, and in God's name she will do all she can to get her hands on Yorick and reignite the human race. But with her daughter distracted and feelings of powerlessness and isolation, Norma begins to crumble. In her engulfing sadness, she commits suicide that will cause repercussions throughout the Pentagon and for Jennifer Brown's presidency.
Oof. And as you mentioned, an amazing performance from Paris Jefferson, who plays Norma in this episode, and those final scenes, just amazing ending to the episode. Will we get into and talk about our top moments so that we can kind of get through everything that's happened in this episode? It's quite a lot, really. Chris, do you want to go first with your first point, your top moment from the episode?
Sure. Let's talk about Prison Break. No, not the original award-winning TV show. Let's talk about the Prison Break in this show. This is well, spoilers. This is a storyline ripped straight from the comics. And it was one that I did not think they'd do this early.
Right.
I don't know why. I assumed it might be a season 2 plotline. But they have done it. They have gone there, and it is always an interesting take. Like, what would happen to the incarcerated during an apocalypse? And it's something you have to start to wonder about. And this is always fun. Like, it is, well, okay, let's talk about the how they get there. The fantastic scene in the camper van. And just the 355's continued arrogance.
Okay. It's a weird word, Chris.
It is. Like, she knows she's pushing herself to beyond her limits. And yet, rather than ask for aid or help from her fellow survivors, her compatriots, her companions, her traveling, I was going to say, it is a quartet.
It is, yeah.
When you take in Ampersand. She's barreling. It's everything is her own. She must do it by herself. And we do get a bit of redemption towards the end of this. But I talked about this last episode. They are trying to somewhat flip the script. That is, you feel sorry for Yorick now, and you question 355 a lot more. And this kind of begins to highlight that, in that it's, again, I'll use the word arrogance. There probably is a better term for it, but it's her arrogance here that essentially causes a car accident that leads to them being captured.
Yeah, it's part of that. I probably wouldn't use the term arrogance for it. I think we talked about it at the end of the last episode, how hurt she is by the two people that she's putting her life on the line for. So she's not willing to trust them. You see it throughout this episode that she's not willing to trust either Dr. Mann or Yorick, even when she's had a rest. She's not willing to trust anything that they're doing. And I think that's where we kind of catch up with her here. They're trying to kind of make friends with her again, but effectively it's like, no, you go sit in the back of the camper van, I'm driving. Don't even want to talk to you after everything that happened last week, effectively. Don't want to be involved with you. So, remember, again, she is also a special agent who was put into the field on her own, sometimes for very long periods of time, as we heard in the opening episode, as we got our introduction to 355. She has absolutely done everything on her own in the past and been slotted in undercover within certain environments that she's able to get herself out of. So maybe that is arrogance or just confidence in her abilities that she should be able to get through this. But we're talking, I think we're around day 72 or 73 now, since everything went down, and it feels like they haven't slept and haven't done any kind of rest periods at all. So of course that would be also playing on her.
That's true. That is true. But it does lead to this fantastic scene. And okay, we won't talk about her scene. We can touch on that in a second. But just the queries you get, the question marks that are thrown up over your head as Dr. Mann comes out. There's a tied up, nearly dead Yorick. Ampersand is crying. And then you just get these random people pointing shotguns at her. Having forgotten a lot of the book, or sorry, not a lot of, I should say, forgetting outside of the main story beats and not kind of putting two and two together. I'm like, oh, what are they doing here? Oh, right. Okay. Like, I'm really interested. Let's see how this happens. Yeah. And you're like, you don't know. And next thing you know, Yorick wakes up naked and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Absolutely. I have to give a big compliment to the director, Lara Wolkstein, for the opening scene with the camper van entering this area before it crashes into the tree. There's a sign on the side of the road that says, "Do not stop for hitchhikers." That's a very well-known sign around prisons. In case there's a breakout, you're not supposed to pick up hitchhikers because you could be picking up someone that broke out of prison.
I didn't see the sign.
A literal signpost for what you're going to see in the storyline, which I thought was really funny. It doesn't have a tag on it saying women's prison in the area or anything like that. It just literally says, "Do not pick up hitchhikers in this area." I love the signposting. Well done.
That's really good. I think the other thing that I really liked, it's the aftermath, as you mentioned there, Chris, after the crash, and you see Alison Mann sort of checking things and sort of staggering out the back. But it's that shot. I just thought it was amazing where you just, you know, she's gone to check on 355 and it's because it's dark, there's a slight bit of mist. And you just see the lights in the distance coming, and then the camera walks round with her, I think, round the front, and the lights just get brighter and brighter and brighter until it's Alison Mann silhouetted against those lights, and then she kind of comes running back. You can see the odd gun and figure behind those lights. But I just thought that was like phenomenally good. Really sort of camera shots. I just thought it gave so much atmosphere. Yeah. It felt iconic with Alison Mann stood on her own, not knowing where 355 is. Yorick effectively passed out unconscious in the back. It was just really, really good. And who are these mysterious people that are, barely visible from their big spotlights and so on. So that was really, I just loved that shot. And I did really enjoy just the central conceit of him doing a magic trick in the back. And then, the women thinking that he was actually a hostage of Alison Mann and 355. I just thought that conceit was really nicely done. And they didn't drag it out either. It was explained away. Yorick got it when they said it. It led to some really good, dialogue, and I thought there was some great dialogue throughout this episode as well. But, he's explaining, well, I'm an escape artist, and you've just got one of the women saying, "Are you being funny?" And he goes, "No, jokes are funny." And it's just like, I love the interchange between him and this group of ladies and women over the breakfast table. I thought it was really sort of nicely played, and certainly the woman that kind of is with him through most of this episode that he wakes up naked next to. I mean, again, just his awkwardness of getting out, getting the 2 cushions and so on, trying to figure out where he is.
Yeah.
I think he's going to go running in with a trophy. But it's when he asks them, he goes, why did I wake up naked in bed? Next to her.
Sonia.
Next to Sonia. And she's kind of like, she goes, well, we needed to take your clothes off because they were bloody and dirty. And he goes, we? And she goes, well, it was just me. And I love the exchange with her because, she just goes, don't worry, it was no great honor. Yeah. And it's just then her look to like the people on the other side of the picnic table camera. And she kind of just does that little smile, shake of the head and sort of pulls out her tongue to say, there wasn't much down there. Why is he but it's that banter of like, what, there's no great honor in it. It wasn't like, it was horse material going on down there. So I just loved the expression and the, just the vibe that she gave off and the interaction with the people on the other side of the picnic table that you couldn't see their faces and you just got the sense that there was that sort of that exchange of glances, the sniggering, the sort of just saying, who do you think you are? And, again, like they're not particularly impressed that he's the last man. It's so just
like, we have men. When do we need you?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Really good.
So I really like that. And I think the other thing that distinguishes this group though as well, which is really quite interesting, is that they actually, yes, they're ex-prisoners, but they seem the most level-headed of people that we've encountered so far. You've got the craziness going on in Boston. We've seen with Roxanne at the warehouse with Hero, where it's all a bit threatening. Everything seems a bit threatening, and here, I'm not saying you don't get a sense of underlying threat. We hear that Janice, who's their leader, killed 2 people back in the 70s, so she's a murderer and so on. But it seems like that, I guess, camaraderie of being in the prison, assuming you've got no direct kind of enemies or whatever, that has allowed them to be quite cooperative and that outside and seem to be the most they've got electricity. They seem to be having a good cookout, right at the end. So I kind of like that idea of saying, people who you would perceive or naturally think maybe to be the ones doing the looting and all that, really seem to be possibly the more level-headed at the moment.
I like your qualifications in there, John. There seem to be possibly, there's at the moment, all in there.
I know.
And all really important because there is a very important scene at the end of this episode, where we have one of the ladies approaching the de facto leader, even though they say they don't have a leader, and telling her, obviously Yorick and 355 and Dr. Mann were being chased, and if those people find us, they're going to start asking questions like maybe, what happened to the prison guards? And what happened to the people that used to populate this town that we're now living in, which are 2 really important questions for people that used to be inside a prison. So you're like, hang on a second. What did they do to the prison guards?
No, exactly.
That's the bit I love. That's the bit. Because you're led to believe this whole episode is like, the prisoners are sweet and nice too, and everything's great. And then they just drop that bomb right at the end.
Yeah.
And I can see so many people turn to each other on a couch and go, oh God, yeah.
Exactly.
And just that just kicks, it opens, it's essentially this barn door where you're like, oh, it's a really nice, the most function, as John said, it's the most functional society and group we've met so far. And then they just open this barn door. They don't even just put it open a crack. They just kick it down. And it's just like, oh.
Yeah, no, I kind of, that's why I qualified. And I would slightly disagree to think that I think there's always a sense of underlying tension here when it's prisoners. And I mean, but what I think there's always that underlying threat. But, look after 355. They give her treatment. They actually, in a sense, do justice by, okay, it's the wrong end of the stick, but and they don't kill them. They lock them up after thinking that actually they've captured Yorick and are holding him against his will. Mm-hmm. So there's a functionality there that you can recognize, which there isn't in some of the other places. Certainly not in Boston, which is effectively a running war between the government and the other factions in that city. Mm-hmm. But yes, there is still that underlying threat, but even that threat, I think, even with that comment from, that whilst I think Janice is the leader, that they will make the decision collectively and democratically. You hear Yorick say, what was the margin, of the vote? And she said it was tight, but they've gone with it. And so you have her just expressing the concerns but what about our community? That we've built, that it could be undone if these people are being sort of chased or followed. And I guess at least in terms of the prison and in terms of the community, the men would have died from the event. Absolutely. So I guess the question is who unlocked them from their cell, because would then the female prison guards do that? Probably not. So I guess maybe they were already out. They could have been exercising or, whatever it may have, whatever may have happened, and then they overcome them. So I'm not saying that it wasn't possibly brutal, but I think that's what I mean, is there is this underlying threat. But so far, it's like you can't really diss them for kind of treating their guests pretty well compared to how Roxanne has, Roxanne turned 4 people away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Boston, effectively, it was open warfare. Yeah. So
look at the Pentagon. When President Brown goes out to address the crowds, there is essentially a full-on protest, and she says, "You're welcome to stay and protest." But
I recommend that you go to the camps that we've set up for you. She's still trying to push them away.
She's still trying to get them there.
Yeah. And again, I'm certainly not going to spoil the storyline that's from the comic books or whatever way it's going to go in the future, but I do like that underlining of, maybe you haven't asked that question about these lovely women that have set up this utopian community. I think even Yorick describes it as, where they all vote on everything and everything's going there. They ask the question at the end of the episode. So there is that tension, with them when we get into the next episode. 355 never forgets. We hear a number of times 355 realizing that this is a group of former female prisoners and being on her guard throughout the episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I really like. But I also have to say there is Janice's line back to Don, who says that to her. Janice's line is, we could tell them the truth. And Don goes, well, when's the truth ever worked out for people like us before? So it's just throwing some shadow on top of the possibility that these are a happy community, a happy utopian community, which is what I like about this show. It's what I like about the comic books, that we don't know until it's delivered to us exactly the intentions of every character that Yorick and 355 and Dr. Mann will meet on the road. So.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm no expert on the state of the prison system in the US, but I mean, certainly everything that I've seemed to have heard on documentaries is that, there is an awful lot of people in there for very minor misdemeanors, almost in a sense. And so now, okay, not Janice in this case. She kills someone, but it's an interesting kind of idea that, maybe there is quite a number of injustices where people from that prison, and that's why in themselves they're quite have a sense of justice to other people and why they bring them in. But I just think it's really interesting, that dynamic. As I say, I might be totally upended by the next episode when it's all out warfare, and so on. But I think you get that sense that it could be that anyway from this episode. I don't think it is. I never got the sense that it was a utopia, but it was a functioning place.
Absolutely.
With rules. And again, that's probably coming from the prison system where there's rules for everything.
Exactly, yeah. I'm not sure whether I 100% agree with Sonia's estimation that Janice is harmless. Sure, doesn't she read those types of books that that older women would read, and she's just a relaxed older woman kind of thing. And then when Don challenges her for a second, you see how quickly Janice flips. You see that moment where they're kind of going, "What are you talking about, little girl?" So she does assert her dominance in there. One of the elements as well of your point, Chris, is these moments here that we have 355 and Dr. Mann stuck inside that prison cell all alone, and then we also get Yorick added into the mix. Absolutely love these three actors together. I wonder if this was the kind of chemistry piece that they read together to see if they all work together, because all three of them have great moments in those scenes. I love the conversation between Dr. Mann and 355 to begin with, where Dr. Mann saying, I'm a really intelligent person. I can help you out in your plan. And 355 fires back at her going, well, there were 30 people on the list of most intelligent people in the country. You weren't on that list, effectively. So I love the kind of banter between the two of them there. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
It's even beyond that. It's the shoelace scene where it's Yorick's arrogance. Again, I really like the term arrogance today.
That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll blow right past my arrogance for using the word arrogance. It's his choice where he thinks he can, even in her concussed state, he can take 355 and her shoelace.
Do you think that's what he's doing, really, Chris?
No, he's trying to prove to her that she is sick and concussed. Yes.
Exactly.
But it's that scene, that one where that was for me, even beyond just the back and forth between 355 and Mann. And the chemistry between those two actresses is just fantastic. When you add Yorick and his buffoonery in there, it's even more fun, and the stoicism of 355, and like each of those actors is just fantastic. I say it every time, but like Ashley, Ben, and Diana, you do have to assume as soon as they got the first table read, after they like made that decision, okay, these are our cast, and they got them all together as the three, and they did the first table read. You have to imagine that the directors and the showrunners and everyone were just like, oh, thank God, okay, it worked out. We nailed it. We nailed it, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
It was really good. I mean, there's some elements, I love the fact that even though 355 still, she's injured and concussed and captured, she's still on the ball with trying to get intel, trying to just figure out the situation where she makes the connection that this is a female prison. I love the dialogue between her and Alison Mann around, like, as you said, Derek, about being on the list and intelligence and all that. And, Alison Mann, after being kind of shot down, says, well, I can at least contribute. And she gets shot down again. And I love the line that she comes back at 355 with, and it just shows Alison Mann's sort of pointed, acerbic kind of delivery is, well, as long as there's no trees between here and California, we'll be okay. After the crash. I mean, it's just really great sort of dialogue. And then you add in Yorick into these four walls and one small room. And, just to my earlier point, 358 is still kind of convinced that these women are going to kill us because they're prisoners. Alison Mann is kind of bought into that. Yorick is more optimistic, maybe a bit like myself about it, but Alison again says, well, at least one of us will die ignorant. I'm just so on the ball.
Love that line where it's really Alison 355 talking and 355 delivering. Some of them are serving life sentences. So, and then Yorick kind of wakes up a couple of seconds later and goes, "What? So what? What would happen?" And Alison just goes, "They will kill us." He thinks they've trailed off in their conversation. He missed something, but everybody else has pieced it together. Life sentences. They are murderers. They may kill us. Also, one other great one from Alison Mann. I'm just going to quote lines from this episode because there's so many great ones, but I love that moment where 355 is going, is preparing her shoelace effectively. and saying, don't worry, we'll keep us safe. And Alison goes, yeah, I was really worried for a minute there. And then you got that shoelace. Fantastic. Little extra chemistry moment also between 355 and Alison Mann, and when Alison's taking care of 355's wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting to see this early on in the show as well, isn't it?
Yes. I did not. I get the feeling that they wanted to sprinkle in as many potentials as possible throughout this first season, in the hopes that when they get season 2, that they have a lot of the seeds, if you will.
I think it just works really well as well, because 355, we know nothing about her past. We learn a little bit in this episode about her past, but we know nothing about her personal life outside of what we've seen. We saw in that first episode, thought that was her boyfriend that she was with. It turned out to be a mission that she was on. So we don't really know anything about her history. I like even when Alison's kind of prodding her a little bit, kind of going, do you have a husband at home? Do you have a wife?
Yeah.
And we don't get an answer from 355. She just kind of smiles and nods, or smiles and laughs kind of thing. But I like that we're still not getting more. She's still not an open book this far into the series as well. So that moment plays out as it does, and 355 pushes her away and then goes, oh, like, as in, no offense, like, I'm just take care of the wounds myself kind of thing, I like that.
I'll close it up with perhaps the best part. Even as 355 slips away into unconsciousness with her medicated state, she tells Yorick, don't trust that woman, and falls asleep. So it's going to be fun to see how they progress this storyline in the next episode.
Yeah.
What they do. I get the feeling, once again, they will slightly diverge from what we already know to be the official storyline from the comic books. I think this is my just assumption, is that we will not get the beat for beat. The overarching might be there, but I don't think it will. And that's why I, even more again, enthused by this first season so far. Mm-hmm. Is that they're marching to the beat of their own drum, but that drum is playing part of a song you already know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's their own. It's a cover version that's slightly off. It's just like this is a blues version of Blink 182's. Like all the small things.
Okay, there's an analogy. I do like how they've expanded these stories in the show. Anything else on this side of the story before we move on?
No, nothing more from me.
All right, John, take us on to your favourite moment from the episode.
Mine is the family affair. It's really Norma and Kimberly Cunningham, the First Lady and the First Lady's daughter. And it kind of, it's all starting with that debrief from the three bikers of the apocalypse to Jennifer, and also to Regina and the captain. And so effectively, the new information being thrown into the boiling pot that is the Pentagon, which is a man and his monkey. And this information ultimately takes us on a journey in the Pentagon, which I just thought was incredible, and in no small way down to Paris Jefferson's portrayal of effectively a crumbling and disintegrating former First Lady, but also her daughter Kimberly, played by Amber Tamberlin. I was transfixed by it. I thought Paris Jefferson was phenomenal. And I loved the journey. Right at the start, Norma says about Jennifer, she's a decent woman. And how it changes to, having this information about the man and monkey, where she drops the glass, she realizes she did see them in the Pentagon. It alerts Regina and Kimberly to that fact, but where she confronts Jennifer, in the war room, the operations room, says, why you? You weren't even a good mother. It should have been Ted or my son or my grandbabies. And just the pointedness of that delivery. And I guess luckily for Jennifer, most of the other people really have no idea what she's talking about. Because it's so pointed, so directed and focused, her anger at Jennifer for making her feel as though she's going crazy, because she's going crazy being cooped up in the 5 walls of the Pentagon, let alone,
very good job.
So, and we've seen that, like there's just this wonderful vacant stare that Paris Jefferson does with her eyes. But, so it goes from this delivery of anger to kind of hurt when she realizes that she's not even been involved with things that have happened around the family's sort of properties or their life. About, she wants to go off and be pioneer women again at one of the houses out in the countryside, with orchards and all that, and it's gone. It was taken out by a burst dam.
The whole town,
she's, as she keeps saying, I have to get out of here. Let's go home. We've seen this already. It's claustrophobic. It's falling in on her. And
she has no purpose either. She was former First Lady, and I love that we've seen her play both sides of that role as well. It shows how great an actress she is. We saw her in the first episode in that really great stoic supporting role of the president. We saw her with her grandkids at this big party that was thrown in her honor, and now we've seen her for the last 3 or 4 episodes lying in bed watching TV. We see her when she does when Kimberly does get her out of bed, coax her out of bed. We just see her sitting on a couch drinking whiskey at some time in the afternoon.
Watching former reruns of MASH and so on, and all the while she's sort of withdrawing into inaction and closing herself. And Kimberly is absolutely pent up with rage about this revelation that has come. I mean, I love the fact that, Regina as well seems to think that the story from the soldiers is really all a bit agog and peculiar and crazy. She doesn't put any substance in it. Yeah. But, it fires Kimberly up completely. And I'll come to that in a bit, but it's just where Kimberly is sort of, in God's name, to choose Yorick for this divine purpose. And you have Norma just kind of, it's almost like a sigh. It's like, I just want to go home. There is no God. Like, she's not even listening to her daughter. She, it's that desperation. And then, her only way out is to get on the roof of the Pentagon and throw herself off. Yeah. And that scene with Kimberly seeing the letter or the note that's been left on the bed and running into the corridor, the scream going down the corridor, but it cuts so well to Jennifer waking up to Kim's scream of agony. And it's a metaphor for the own alarm bell of effectively the trouble that she is in. And I mean, like, Jennifer Brown actually doesn't come off very empathetic to me in this. Nope. When Norma comes to that war room, I mean, she kind of does that dutiful, PR thing of, let's have respect. She's maintaining she's crazy, she's gone nuts, line effectively. And she knows so well that it's of her making. Yeah. Because she's trying to keep her son a secret.
Jennifer has a lot of lucky escapes in this episode. The initial report from the captain that comes to her, she kind of says, well, hang on a second, you were drugged and you were 10 feet away, and the possibilities of a man being out there, they're pretty low. So let's not talk about this, and let's get them reassigned as soon as possible, because we can't get this story spreading because it's going to be a powder keg. Yeah. Yet she knows this is all true. And she's cast out on another person. So again, with the First Lady saying, oh, well, gotta remember, she lost her 3 grandkids. They were all in bed together watching a movie, and the 3 grandkids died. Like, the kind of toll that will take on a person, and they'll have these stories in their head. Like, that's going to throw her over the edge, kind of thing, is what Jennifer's saying, to cover up a true story that is now affecting everything that's going on. Yeah. So,
it has the implications, and that's why I loved her waking up to the screams, because the subterfuge of Jennifer, and you understand why she's done that herself, is coming home to roost, without, her being honest about it effectively,
Yeah.
it will come home to roost. But I mean, to the point, I thought this was phenomenal acting from Paris Jefferson. I really felt for her. And I thought it was done so well. And, you know, flip side of that is Kimberly getting sort of the wind of the Holy Spirit in her sails. And, this idea of, you know, we can turn this to our advantage. Yorick is the key, that God has chosen him. I mean, even Regina was like going, okay, like you could see the kind of, you're getting a little sort of, evangelical at this point, you know, that God has chosen him for this divine purpose.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And this is probably my own preconception, but it's the, you know, last week's episode, we see Kimberly with Christine saying, you know, Christians are misunderstood. We're very understanding and very open. And she gets this zealous zeal, I guess, for finding Yorick. To tear down Jennifer's administration, show that it's bad at the center, because they're not wanting to, you know, reignite, bring the world back from the loss of all these men, through I guess the central sperm bank in this story, which is Yorick. So it's that flip where she isn't being understanding about what Jennifer did, even though I didn't necessarily kind of side with Jennifer in this idea. You know the reason for doing it. Kimberly is now, so you can see she is driven by emotion, and certainly with the death of her mum now. And she's going to put that squarely on the shoulders of Jennifer. Yeah. It's going to absolutely motivate her to destroy this woman.
Well, it's official right now. She has lost everything. She's lost her kids. She's lost her husband. She's lost her father. Now her mother's gone. She has no power as well. She's lost everything. Yeah. Her home's gone as well, which we had confirmed in the episode here as well.
I think it's done really, really well, because it feels almost Shakespearean to me. Absolutely. You know, it within the Pentagon here, it feels properly epic in terms of this power struggle, which I kind of didn't think it would get to that point. I just think it's really phenomenally done here. Yeah, and really. I just felt so much for Norma here, you know. Yeah, but when she says, "You made me believe I was crazy," you know, effectively to Jennifer Brown.
Yeah.
But
it is like, even that moment where you mentioned earlier on, where she says, "I want to go home." And Kimberly tries to console her with saying, no, Mom, you are home. And I actually think that's the moment that she breaks. She's already given up God. She's already realized that everything's lost, and realized nobody's telling her anything, even about losing her own home. Nobody's told her about it. They just assumed that somebody else will. Even Kimberly did. But when she says to her, no, you are home, that's the moment she realized how trapped she really is. Yeah. And that's what pushes her to do what she does, which is an awful, awful scene. But about Kim and Kimberly and what she wants to do here as well, you can tell how far she's taking it to the extreme. It's not about capturing Yorick to use him for her own purpose. It is, as you say, tearing down Jennifer's government. But then she says, we'll get him back here, and then we'll reignite the human race, and then it'll be okay, we'll be back to being a nation of mothers. And you can tell that's the point where Regina's going, whoa, hang on a second.
No, exactly.
Back to a nation of mothers. That's way further away from where I'm going. So we're now both on two different extremes as well.
Well, and it's the divineness, the divine purpose as well. So there's the added element here of it being driven by the book, effectively. You know, that you feel she will use any excuse and it will potentially be brought down to being God's purpose. You know, or not almost like Spanish Inquisition type thing, you know, or that violence that is done in the name of God kind of thing.
Like we
I
said
thought
last
you were going to
week
say, because like something comes left the field and no one was expecting, because no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Well, no, exactly.
But exactly like we were saying last week about the way that she rationalized within her mind why Christine was pregnant. You know, she rationalized that this was God's punishment, and then she rationalized, oh, actually, no, this is God's decision to make someone pregnant so you can show life inside all of this death. And now she's rationalizing, oh, the reason why Yorick was chosen was because, oh, well, that's in God's plan, and that will help us restart society, and it'll make us a nation of mothers again. And it's just this rationalization with God in the background, and effectively saying that every decision that she turns her mind to that can benefit her is because that's God's choice and God's will for her and the world. And that's just how extreme Kimmy's gone.
Yeah, but it's also a coping mechanism. You know, this her religion, her faith is that coping mechanism, along with now the drive to get a family back, but also it's just being power charged with emotion, with the suicide of her mum, which she knows will be down to, it'll be interesting what's in the note actually, but it potentially, you know, she's put that on Jennifer. And I find Kimberly fascinating. Again, it's just such a great portrayal of someone who in effect is breaking down like her mother.
Yeah.
But channeling it outwards with rage and emotion rather than internalizing it as Norma did. And it's the contrast between the two of them. And I thought this was probably some of the best scenes in TV I've seen in ages. And I put it down to these two actors of Amber Timberlin and Paris Jefferson. I just love these two.
Yeah. For me, yes to everything you both have said. And again, this is why this is one of my favorite episodes. Really, what I wanted to give a shout out to was Eliza Clark and Olivia Purnell for this, because Purnell's episodes that she's written has a lot more of Kimberly in it and things like that. And what I'm starting to see is it's a characterization of both conservative viewpoints in the US, but that versus the evangelical side of some of the more conservative Republican viewpoints in the US and how they differ. So, because, look, the human beings, we like to categorize, and it's easier just to put a lot of people into certain pots. So, you're gay, you're straight, okay, it's one of the two. You're X or you're Y. It's never X, Y, Z or A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, it's easier just to... So, I see this as it's a character study in the what it is to be... Because I'm saying Republican. They said to be Republican in the beginning as a political leaning. They're Republican. One is very conservative Republican, and it's that you could say it's the Mallory Green. Now Kimberly is coming into this evangelical, where you said it's God's plan, it's God's decision. It's going to come down to like what it means to be both of those, and what it means in an apocalypse, and they both of them having different points of how they want to rally the base, move the country forward. So I just find it this amazing character study, conversation, storyline, if you will, which is going to be. We know they are Senator Brown's, President Brown's opposition.
I agree,
and you're just like they are the political bad sense in this storyline, in that they're the opposition to everything that President Brown is going to try to achieve. But it's actually interesting because you're seeing that, okay, there's not just a bad, quote unquote, there is the two different warring factions within the bad, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you here. I think, and to your point with Eliza Clark and for this episode with Olivia Purnell, and we've always said it, haven't we, in our shows that we've covered, is that, you know, the best ones provide nuance, subtlety, and show the greyness. And unfortunately, we live in a world where it's yes or no, it's black or white, it's Democrat, Republican, Labour, Conservative, you know, whatever it might be. And that's how it's always done, or good and bad even. Yeah. And it's, to your point, that the subtlety of difference of being a conservative, small c, and seeing the look on Regina. And that's the thing here. You know, that was the great thing about Regina Oliver in this episode, was that on the one hand, actually, even though, she doesn't want to agree with Jennifer Brown, she agrees that what is being in the debrief is crazy and peculiar. And, that the points that Jennifer makes, that it was dark, it was confusing, they were being taken down, they were drugged, it could have been a transgender person, you never know.
There was a monkey on the guy's back,
that it sounds crazy. And so she actually agrees with Jennifer's assessment of their debrief. And then you have the point where Kimberly is off on one, and the look of Regina. And that is, as to your point, Chris, and I'm all for this, is showing the subtleties and the spectrum that exists, even in these big camps that people are just put into and classified as, which makes it ultimately wrong, and makes it ultimately, makes people misunderstood, because yes, there's this huge spectrum, like being in the LGBTQI plus community. It's like a huge spectrum.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I love that the showrunners are doing that.
Yeah.
It's the spectrum of how the prison ladies are portrayed here as at one level being actually, they might still be able to gut you with a knife at the end of it, but there's a level of humanity about them because they've had a doctor look at 355, and they've fed Yorick, and they've fed the three of them.
Got toast.
The world is not black and white; it is 50 shades of grey.
Well, yeah. But also they did talk about that before as well. We heard Regina Oliver say last week, I'm a conservative and I'm a feminist, but feminists seem to think that doesn't belong to conservatives. These are the nuances. When you turn it into, you can only be one political party or another political party, you're going to have huge amounts of variations between that. That's just simple choices in your life. Which political party you follow doesn't determine everything else about you as a person. So I love that they're able to explore that in the show. They're not putting it down as this is a bad guy, this is a good guy. This is just the people who are left in this world and their stories. So and that's what makes this show interesting. And that's what should make every TV show interesting. If you're going to do 10 episodes of a TV show, justify why it's longer than 2 hours, right? Spend time with the characters, get to know them, get to know the nuances and the differences about them. And I think they're doing such a good job in the show. Yeah. I've got one final moment to call out from this, from your point, John, that I really liked. I just want to make sure it's mentioned. I've said about Kimmy being very extreme in what she thinks she can do with having Yorick back. There's an earlier moment that this is called out as well, where she says, I'm going to see my children again. Yeah. She means that. She seems to think that if she gets control of Yorick or gets control of this situation, she's going to be able to bring her actual children back. And her mother says to her, you'll see them when you die.
Yep.
And Kimberly's quite shocked at that. And Norma's saying to her, well, you don't seem to have shed any tears. If you shed one, your children would have to share it. That's a really cutting dig into who Kimberly is. But it is, like you said, Chris, it is that Kimberly hasn't dealt with this situation. Mm-hmm. It's an impossible situation for anybody to deal with. But Kimberly particularly seems to be looking for a way back into her old life and hasn't really accepted that that's gone now. Gonna have to draw a line over that and work out how you live on in the future effectively.
Yeah.
I think the line is drawn in this episode at the end when she is in the hallway, because I just want to call out, and I think I have nothing else to add, so I'm happy to move it on to the final point, but that the scene as Kimberly screaming in the Pentagon hall, and it just slowly pans backwards with a bone-chilling scream, a deathly hollow scream, and it's just that choice to, rather than fixate on the Kimberly as being like an up-close and personal scream, shows those tears, it's kind of like just slowly panning away and showing a very empty hall, an empty Pentagon, an empty institution.
Definitely. And I think the choice to cut to Jennifer being startled and waking up is
fantastic.
Genius. It's
Not
really
an
good.
entirely empty hallway though, Chris. Christine is coming up to console her. So remember, Kimmy has been trying to get very close to Christine for the last few episodes. I think this might be something that will bind the two of them together.
Okay,
going
yeah.
forward. I think I'm almost sure that that's Christine that's coming up behind her. Same haircut, same dress that she was wearing throughout the episode. So I think this might be a little moment that will bond the two of them together. So
interesting.
That'll be interesting to see. Remember, the only other person in the Pentagon that knows that Yorick is alive is Christine, and now Kimmy has that information. So maybe she'll get confirmation from Christine as well. So that'll be quite interesting. I thought that was great, but it was a fantastically shot scene. Yeah. You're totally right. Anything else from me to add on that point, John, before we close?
No, that's it from me.
Right. I went third. So that means I've got the final big storyline from the episode. Beth is back
from Australia.
She never went to Australia, Chris. We knew that. But she did in the comics. And we were wondering how they were going to incorporate her back into the show. We knew since she was in the US in that opening episode where Yorick proposed to her stupidly, and he got rightfully broken up with by Beth. We have her now coming back and going into the Pentagon. And basically, it was really interesting, I thought, because now Beth is not a character that you can trust, because she's saying quite a lot of the things you would expect Beth, the former fiance of, or the former girlfriend, at least, of Yorick, saying all the right things to Jennifer, all the nice things, all the, all of these ideas that she was in love with Yorick, and she couldn't go back to the apartment because he was dead and she couldn't see him that way, and she just wanted to speak to somebody else that loved Yorick. And what you find out is actually what she was trying to do was get a sneaky peek at this actual government that's in here. We know from previous episodes, particularly the one set in Boston, we know that there's a lot of resentment out there for Jennifer Brown as president, and a lot of anti-government sentiment out there. A lot of people blaming the government for what happened and why they've ended off in this situation. So, really interesting to see Beth using her connection with Jennifer to get inside and get a sneaky peek about what's inside. And again, interesting to see her description of it, saying it's like I went into a time machine. Everything's working in there. They have water and food and showers and electricity. Everything's perfectly fine inside. They don't see what it's really like on the outside, effectively. So that's a significant change for Beth, that she's potentially, they're keeping it kind of vague, but I'm guessing you're supposed to read into it that she sided with the anti-government parties or the anti-government organizations, effectively, and she's saying, give it a kick and that entire government will collapse. And she has a really quick way in there because she's already been told by Jennifer she wants anything at all, just come back and she'll be let in, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, I think Jennifer, incredibly lucky, probably just still being cagey that she doesn't, they have a lot of conversation about Yorick and their relationship, and obviously Jennifer is finding out for the first time certain other things, that she didn't accept the proposal for marriage and all that. But even despite that, even though there is that pretense of closeness between them, you can have anything you want, have a shower, here's the bears, we'll feed you, and so on. That Jennifer doesn't have it within her to be able to trust the news that Yorick is alive with Beth. And that ultimately is a very smart move by accident for Jennifer, because of the fact that if she had, that would now be in the hands of this group.
Exactly.
Whatever and whoever that group is and what they're about. But obviously, the fall of the government is possibly on their agenda, given what Beth said. Yeah. It's interesting because, just because this is really the second time we've seen Beth, the whole interaction, and maybe it was because Jennifer didn't open up about Yorick to her, then suddenly did feel cold. It felt like I can't really I'm not necessarily overjoyed to see Beth there. And then when she decided to leave, it was like, oh, okay, that's really weird. And then you see her getting into the back of the van and the ulterior motives, and you kind of go, that's probably just really damn fine acting, to be honest. That is that is the feeling that you're getting from her, because that's the whole point, really. To me, Beth is the calculated cold person. And I guess now it's even more so because it's calculated for survival, or it's another power, sort of center of power in this world. Yeah. Just so happens to be outside of the walls.
Again, she's been out in the world 2.5 months now. And is walking into her ex-boyfriend's mother's house, effectively, which is now the Pentagon, and she's the leader of the free world, let's say. Again, so there's definitely going to be some standoffishness there, but there was a specific decision made by Jennifer here as well. It wasn't just that she refrained from telling her that Yorick is alive. She's asked by Beth, how did you find Yorick? And she said, oh, same as everybody else, I found his license. So she has effectively said to him, I'm confirming to you my son's dead, just the same way as so many other people who didn't find the body. We found a license. He's dead. That's what she said to him. Do you think she made that decision to deal with the question that way because Beth said we didn't get engaged? Jennifer thought that Yorick had proposed to Beth, effectively, and Beth says to him, I refused. And there is a kind of I think that's the moment there's a little bit of a twist, and Jennifer kind of going, oh, hang on a second. You're not really my daughter. You're not my potential daughter-in-law who lost her fiance. You're a person that turned him down. You know, I don't know. She does console Beth.
Yeah, I actually quite like that she said, well, that's your choice. Mm-hmm. But at the same, I thought that was really good of Jennifer to do. I think, though, it's as well when she's saying, it was the fact that he was alone when he died that Jennifer's like going, yeah, you left him, and even though he is alive, it's that the alternative could have been as she describes. Right. And I think that must put a little bit of a different twist on their relationship.
Luckily, again, a very lucky decision from Jennifer, considering everything else that she's gotten away with in this episode. But I just thought it was really important to mention the return of Beth in the episode as well.
Oh, 100%. And for me, one of the most interesting parts is when the jacket is offered.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wear that. I can't take that. Why? And then she points to the seal. I can't take this.
Exactly. So it kind of confirms to Jennifer probably that she was probably right to keep that information away.
Exactly.
Of course, she's going to go back outside. There's thousands of people outside the Pentagon, as we mentioned earlier on, who have been raging against the system for the last 2 months, effectively. So, of course, you probably don't want to be walking outside with any kind of presidential seal on you. You'll get attacked.
You can take the seal off, though. I was like, that's a stitch on. Come on.
Yeah. Pick it off. Exactly.
Here, we'll just get you a bit of scissors. Done. You're fine. For me, this is an interesting one. Very interested to see where they go with this, what they do with this.
Because again, completely different in the comic books.
Exactly.
They don't meet each other at all. They in the early parts of those comic books, the initial conversation that's had with them where he proposes to her is over Skype. There's no connection between the two of them, just that Yorick's looking for his fiance, and that's it. So really good that she's been brought into this storyline in the US.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think that's it for my point. Just wanted to cover that one off. Any notes, anything else that we want to talk about before we close out the episode, guys?
None from me. No.
No, nothing here.
All right, just one last one because we missed it earlier on. 355's dream.
Oh God, yeah.
She wakes up to find the crash site effectively from where her parents were killed when she was a child. I think she said she was 12 when that happened, when the crash happened. Anybody else get caught on that since we hadn't seen 355 getting taken back to the prison? Anybody else assumed that she'd been thrown out of the camper van? That was her waking up from the camper van?
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly what I meant. I was like, oh.
Really well put together scene, because you're kind of going, oh, there's another car that's crashed over there, just at the other side of the road, just after she's crashed into a tree. But
as soon as I saw the necklace, because it's the one around her neck, that I realised, okay, it's a dream.
Or must be her mother's necklace.
Yeah.
The interesting part is they are sprinkling in more of 355's history.
Exactly.
Earlier on, and what I'm way more interested. It's just more because I love National Treasure and all of the US crazy conspiratorial mystery groups when they start talking about the Culper ring. and how they get to that one. I'm like, ooh, it's going to be interesting. I'm 100% they're going to change the origin of the Culper ring. But let's see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that in the future episodes. Just again, another great moment from the episode, and really well filmed. Because I was kind of going, wow, she got thrown all the way out of the car, going in and saving Yorick and Dr. Mann from these people that have captured them or something like that. But it turns out to be another dream. Really interested to see inside the mind of 355 and what she's going through. I think that's it for the episode. Overall, we've kind of already said our overall thoughts of the episode, but anything else to add about overall thoughts from the episode, John?
No, this was my favourite of the series so far. I'd give it 5 strategically placed cushions out of 5. I just loved this. I mean, I can't reiterate it enough, from Norma, the former First Lady, to Kimberly Cunningham, even, to Janice, the leader of the former prison ladies. I really, really enjoyed all the performances here, and also, the continuation of the central ones with Alison, 355, and Yorick. It was just so good. 5 strategically placed cushions out of 5.
Excellent. How about yourself, Chris? Anything else to add?
I'll double that 5 and make it 10.
10 out of 5.
Yes, 100%. 10 out of 5. For me, this is my favourite in... I've discussed it. I over the last couple of ones, I've been up and down, and they've been it's going faster and it's too slow in parts, and overall, this for me has reignited what I believe to be the crux of what is Why the Last Man as a comic book, and a narrative story. And I think this has been, you put it best, this is why they did it. They did a TV show and not a 2-hour movie. Like, they're able to go into these nuances and this character development and growth and tell some of these stories. And they are walking to a beat of their own drum, their own song, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to point out, we had 3 points there to talk about in the episode. Our first point in the 4 prisoners of the ladies' prison. That's the comic book story that they took. But the other 2 major points in the episode aren't from the comic books. Those are completely from the TV. Beth is an Australian comic books, and there isn't that machination. There's no Virginia Oliver that I'm aware of as a major character in the comic books, and there's no Kimberly, and there's none of her family story is in there at all. So this is all created for the TV, and all really, really good. Loved this episode. I love that they have such great writers on board that are able to take this and turn it into such a great storyline. And we've got 3 more episodes left to go. Excellent stuff.
Exactly.
Excellent. Let's have a check-in with our wonderful fellow survivors. Let's go on to some feedback. First up, over on Facebook on last week's episode, Dr. Bob Phillips says, Women in Black and the Church of the Latter-day Musicians was a spooky and beautiful opening. The Walmart warriors, Amazons, feel like the hardest edge this world can get to. They aren't wrong in lots of what they said, but that baptism, maybe a step or 1,000 too far. Yorick is nothing but a liability. A well-meaning one, but a liability.
I think that is Yorick spot on. Absolutely. I think he's just this sort of lovable liability.
Yeah. It's a really unfortunate, isn't it? Because you can't drop him off somewhere. If you had somebody else that you were traveling the country with and they were a liability, you're just going to go, right, you just stay there. I'll continue on with this mission. But the mission is him as well. So that's the big problem with him being a liability, isn't it? Thanks so much, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Yes. Over on Twitter, we got some feedback from Kevin Grogu's Broseph, who goes by the handle @LovesWars, who had this to say: I love all of your podcasts. Great fun coverage of a great show. This might be a bit off topic, but I've been wanting to say this ever since your coverage of Why the Last Man started. I want to tip my hat to the new intro and outro music for this podcast. It's your best yet. Derek, do you want to tell them about the intro and outro?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks so much, Kevin, for that. We searched pretty long and hard for our intros and outros. I think, John, you found this one for the episode. You gave a couple of options for the episodes for this one. It's by the artist Ketsa, and the song itself is called Tumbleweeds. We've just taken a little edit from it. I intended to give you the full version of the song on the final episode. I will put it in there, but it absolutely suits this show so well. Yeah. I love there's a bit in the edit that we've got, which we do have a choir singing along with this kind of country and western, let's say western music, which, given last week's episode particularly, suits really well in this show. We have a mix of everything that's in there. It's like as if it was written for the show. It wasn't. So huge thank you to Ketsa for the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks very much, Kevin, for your feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yes, we are a big fan of your brother.
Grogu from
Grogu.
Mandalorian, yes.
We also got some feedback from Victor Von Doom over on email, who says, "Greetings, survivors. This series hits harder with each episode. The former inmates have a little more compassion and composure than others we have met so far. What was Y thinking, challenging 355? He seems to never learn. Does Sonia have designs on Y? Mm-hmm. Regina and Kim have what they need to challenge Jennifer, but with the First Lady's tragic death, it may become a bit more complicated. I was suspicious of Beth's appearance. I felt she could not be trusted. It must be the freckles. Of course, I was later proven right. The murd is about to hit the fan again. Keep the faith, survivors. Victor Von Doom." Thanks, Victor. Yeah, I think the old murd is gonna hit the fan for sure. It is going up Murd Creek without a paddle for sure. Because there's way too much raw emotion flying around here. And just, I guess, ideological stuff as well, that it is not really gonna lead to a happy melting pot in the Pentagon, I don't think.
No, definitely not. Thanks so much, Victor, for your feedback. I do like that Yorick did challenge 355. I think he probably felt she was a little less strong than she ended off being. She could still kick his ass, no matter whether she's 10 feet under the ground or not. But I do like that he at least challenged her to try and teach her that, hang on a second, you need to take a break. You're not
definitely well. There's a really nice smirk from 355 during that fight as well, because, she knows that she's underpowered as well, yet with a few killer assassin bootlaces that she can still get him. I just loved some of her expressions during that fight. She was just both like proud of the fact that she could do it and was smirking at him, egging him on, but also knowing that she was sort of powered down from the concussion. It was really, and the kind of the strain of certain things, and obviously to the extent that she throws up at the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a funny little ending, and I love that it just happened just before Sonia turned the key to come into the room as well. Great stuff. Thanks very much, Victor. We also have an email in from Christina, who said, "Hiya, been enjoying your commentary on one of my favorite comics. Y has a special place in my heart. I'm a huge black female comic nerd, but this is the first comic that had someone that looked like me as a primary and important character. I devoured a world that not only was fascinating, but placed a black female character as the antagonist. Did you catch the 355's card? Was the Queen of Hearts when Yorick did his card trick? I am really worried about Jennifer. She is being surrounded on all sides, leading me to believe she will fail. Or she will need to become far more brutal than she is currently being. Hearing they almost set a guard on fire is a premonition of what I feel is coming. And gaslighting the military that will feel the most offended at the loss of the two pilots, more so than anyone outside of the gates, as Regina believes. Then there's Kimmy, who certainly will try to spin her mother's suicide as Jennifer's gaslighting of her. I've watched enough seasons of Scandal to know that a familial death works in a politician's favour. This will give her persuasive clout in some fashion, especially since there's an election coming. If the rebels attack the Pentagon, the military and Fearful will want Regina's vengeful reasoning of the situation. Jennifer will never lead them to Yorick. How crazy did Kimmy appear in that scene about how Yorick is God's plan and she will make everyone a nation of mothers again? Just reminds us some cults existed long before the emerging ones and have a history of violence to justify their rhetoric. I wonder how much Regina is swallowing this. I felt as if Kim wasn't taking hints from her mother that Regina's a nut job, but maybe Marla realised her daughter has slid in that direction as well, as it's the last straw that broke her before she couldn't live anymore. 355 beating up Yorick and Mann slapping him for antagonising her was hilarious, but what is subtly done is her acquiescence to their desired agency. She allows Mann to speak when she told her she would do the talking once a member arrived. She allowed Yorick's judgment on staying to play out as he accepted their offer. She kept saying she was fine, but once it was clear she wasn't, she allowed her feistily to be taken care of, though she promises it will never ever happen again. Can't wait to see what happens with these new changes. Beth better not have anything to do with anything happening to Jennifer, and if so, how will that affect the story going forward? Christina from Black Girl Couch Reviews. Thanks so much, Christina. Really good to hear your thoughts on the episode. You had some really good points there, particularly on 355 and allowing them to kind of take care of her without actually saying she's allowing them to take care of her. You see that moment when she's saying, when she's finally being led out of the cell, she's falling backwards, but not allowing Yorick to touch her at all, but eventually allows Mann to come in beside her and kind of hold her up, because they've had that fight, but she's acquiescing, like that phrase, she's acquiescing to the idea that Yorick can make some decisions and Mann can actually speak and deal with this situation because she's not feeling well. Yeah. But this is the last time it'll ever happen.
And Christina, to your point, there was that really fantastic scene where Kim is praying, Norma's just been told like they have no house to go back to because it was destroyed in the flood. And just her face, this vacant stare, looking out, and where she, admits to her own daughter, who is praying in front of her that there is no God. I just thought that was really such a fantastic scene. And as you say, it's that realization that maybe Kimmy, with everything that's happened, has slid in a direction that really she can't any longer recognize from everything that's happened. It's like the mother and daughter have moved in opposite directions. So
interesting
really good
that Kimmy may spin that to her side.
Absolutely.
As well. We heard from Regina Oliver in the last episode that she thinks she may not be able to win against Jennifer because Jennifer has tragedy on her side from losing her husband, her son, her daughter, and her daughter, whereas Regina didn't lose anybody because she wasn't married and didn't have kids, we suspect. So interestingly, she may have tragedy on her side because of Kimmy and the loss of her mother.
Yeah.
So
Kim's scream of agony is Jennifer's alarm bell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Christina, for your feedback, and thanks so much for listening to the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, Christina. Really great to get your feedback in.
Thank you, Christina. Now, finally, we have a voicemail that was sent in to feedback at TV Podcast Industries, where you can send any email or a voicemail, much like Steve Brown did. Take it away, Steve.
All right, here we go. Why the Last Man, episode 7. So I guess he's still practicing his escapology, and it's like it's important that you believe that. Oh, that was sudden. I did not see that coming. Crashing the truck. Whoa. Okay, I lost track with this. I may have to rewatch the last episode again. Right, these are the soldiers that were... Yeah, now I remember. Hey, why is he waking up naked in this bed in this strange place? Jokes are funny. You're funny, Yorick. Okay, so they're being held captive. Dr. Mann and 355. She just had this dream of, looks like probably a crash from her younger flashback. Okay, Dr. Mann, we have now established that you're not very perceptive as far as firearms goes and people. Oh, so 355 has figured out they're at a women's prison. Interesting. Okay, I don't think that Kimberly's mom is buying all of this or buying into it. I know Kim wants to usurp the presidency by finding Yorick, and I don't know. It's political. Is there anything to know? I'd love someone to blame. Yeah, great lines right there. Okay, I just figured out this is Beth with the president here. Okay, I don't know why I didn't figure that out before. No, I hope that's not a foreshadowing line. That of course not. No one can get in. It's the Pentagon. Interesting. I don't know if that's true or not. Lynchburg underwater. Crazy. Is she not going to tell her that Yorick is alive? Maybe not. I can see how the truth in this situation might not work out well. Oh, that's rough. And Kimberly figured it out. Okay, I don't know who this group is that Beth has hooked up with, but it is nice that after they show a suicide, they give the suicide prevention hotline. All right, can't wait to talk to you. Hear what you guys say about this one.
Thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, interestingly enough, depending on where you watched it, what country, what feed, a lot of the episodes had a suicide prevention hotline or suicide awareness hotline or help hotline, depending on where. It had that right at the end, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really important. It's a massively difficult subject to deal with, especially in a show like this. It's obviously a drama. It's not real life, but these things that they're dealing with in the show and how real they all are being treated. I'm sure a lot of people are identifying with what's being discussed on the show as well. So important to have that there. Really good to hear your feedback. I love hearing your live Steves as we get a real reaction from you on some of the characters and some of the moments of the episode. Steve, really good.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for the old live Steve. Great stuff.
Loving it.
Again, thanks so much to our fellow survivors for all the feedback, whether it's from email, Facebook, or by voice. It really is appreciated. Just a reminder that you can head on over to Facebook at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. We're on Twitter at TV Pod Industries. And of course, trusted email at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And of course, we are also over on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries and on Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can support us in any which way you wish to. And of course, most importantly, you can support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing the podcast, because yes, as we say, sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to leave us a review, you can leave a review for us over on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you can leave a review on podcasts. We don't get very many reviews for the podcast, but we know you're out there. We get such great feedback in from our listeners, and it's really been great talking about a show like this again on Why the Last Man. We have just finished up our coverage of What If this week, which was the other show we were covering. That was a much lighter toned show in comparison to what's going on Why the Last Man. We have 3 more weeks of Why the Last Man as well, without that kind of lighter side. So we hope you're going to stay with us on TV Podcast Industries for the next 3 episodes. We'll be back with episode 8 of Why the Last Man. Ready, aim, fire next week.
We will.
Light, either, does it?
No.
Like an execution squad somewhere.
I think it's going to go bad for certain people. But so. Yes, thank you so much. Please leave a review. It does help us. Please support us anyway, which you can. Tell your mother, tell your granny, tell your sister, tell your auntie, because there's no men left in this world. Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow survivors. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep surviving. Bye. Bye.